Ciao guys, welcome to ADHD Mondays part 2. I'm just going to check I'm live on Facebook. I am. I was going to focus on the Facebook screen for today, as Facebook is under Meta. I thought Meta Mondays, but I thought I'd mix it up. I wasn't sure, but I thought I'd mix it up. But anywho, I'll say welcome to part 2 of ADHD Mondays. And this video, anyone with ADHD out there, and of course, supporters, carers, guardians, families, and whatnot, anyone connected to ADHD, these videos are for you. So please do get involved as well in sharing information about ADHD, coping techniques, ways to motivate people with ADHD, or whatever it might be that can help people with ADHD. As someone who is an ally, I guess. I mean, I could take a test and it'd be interesting if I found out I had ADHD without realizing. But as far as I'm aware, I don't have ADHD myself. But again, maybe I could. But I think I can connect with people with ADHD from a human level, and also as an atypical person or neurodivergent person. For those who might not see my other videos, but anyway, these are pointers number 11 to 20 as per usual. So here goes. So number 11, I'd love to ask a question for people with ADHD, and again, I guess parents, carers, guardians, family members, friends, or whatever, people who know about ADHD, experts maybe even, or whatnot, but especially for people with ADHD themselves. What are the best ways to help you, and what, if you could change anything about the world as a person with ADHD specifically, or just generally, what would you change? I guess that question could go for everyone, but anyone or everyone, but some of you might not even thought about that question. But I guess I'm focusing more on people with ADHD because these videos are about empowering people with ADHD, but maybe even like partners of, friends of, family members of, or whatever. People connected to those with ADHD might say, "Oh, there is this." They might say, "I understand it's a weakness, but," or in some ways, or it can be a weakness. I mean, sorry, but they might say, "This is one thing that people with ADHD do that is frustrating for other people," or whatever. Or someone with ADHD might say, "This is something I find like." It could be anger management or whatever, anger issues or whatever. But also, yeah, how would you change the world as an ADHD person? And also, what would you like people to know about ADHD and how it affects you or whatever? What about yourself? And maybe like if people don't think you're putting the effort in, or they think you're too hyper, or you don't listen, you can't pay attention to what people say, you zone out, or whatever it might be. It'll be cool to sort of talk about like what you would change, to say, about the world generally, maybe even as someone with ADHD, look at the world differently, but also like how you are treated as someone with ADHD. And again, what tips do you have for anyone else with ADHD? I know there was one of my friends told me actually there was the guy who coined the term ADHD. I think he was German. I'm not sure, but apparently he said that he's quoted as saying that ADHD doesn't actually exist and he made it up, but on his deathbed. But actually, they say because it was from German to English, people are misunderstanding the translation perhaps, and he was probably just saying it's overdiagnosed, or people use that as an excuse for people who are just hyperactive kids, or just being kids, or people with other behavioural problems, or whatever it might be, or people seeking attention. So it's probably that he was saying it was overdiagnosed, not that it doesn't exist, because you can see people with ADHD who can be very similar. I talked about how I want to focus on the A's, like autism and ADHD. Well, exactly autism and ADHD, but it reminds me like with dyslexia, like if people, I often think like if people with dyslexia are just lazy, stupid, dumb, or whatever. If people with dyslexia are lazy, stupid, thick, dumb, or whatever other terms people use for them or think that people with dyslexia have, well, for us, I should say. Then why are some of the best, why are so many great poets, artists especially, writers, musicians, and movie stars, and all sorts of people dyslexic? So it shows, I think if it was laziness, they wouldn't achieve, so it shows the brain works differently, and like you'll find a lot of dyslexics in creative industries. And I'm sure people with ADHD, some people say it's an entrepreneur's superpower, and also even in other areas as well, like music, movies, and different things like that. fields which require a lot of energy, perhaps as well, and being able to keep going and whatnot. I wish I had some of that energy sometimes, but and I talk about like how it can affect people differently. And not everyone with ADHD always has energy, and it can affect people differently. Obviously, it also means a deficit, attention deficit in some areas, whilst also having a hyper focus, hyper concentration and energy for some other areas. But it could lend itself really well for business. Like a lot of people say ADHD is their superpower, just like dyslexia. Even autism sometimes can be perhaps as well. But obviously, in school where you have to sit down and shut up and follow instructions, it's not so good. But in other areas, it can be really good. So it probably gives hope for a lot of younger people to think that, like, okay, I might not be as good in school now, but when I grow up, I can still do well. But again, I'd love to know what other people think. I don't probably over explain that point. But as I say, it's not so good for like where you have to sit still and that kind of. Some people say like doing well in business is pretty much opposite to doing well in school. I don't know if I'd entirely agree. It's literally opposite, but it might be pretty much opposite. But it's certainly very different anyway. Like sitting still, not being disruptive, and things like in industries. In running your own business, it's probably really good, I assume. So they say, like disrupting industries. The big disruptors are the ones who can take over industries and do really well. I tip my hat to them. But moving on to number 12, I'd love to see mentors and role models, famous people in that kind of thing, for instance, for people with ADHD. And I talked about like there was an ADHD millionaires network and even billionaires network, and I'd love for them to be part of what I call it the millionaires group. Like so, people who are either millionaires or billionaires, and sometimes either of those of the same background. So I'd love to have as many different what I call millionaires groups as possible. Millionaire being a common word between a millionaire and a billionaire, and they would network and share ideas and invest in that kind of thing. In this case, those with ADHD who have a net worth of $1 million or more, or in some cases $1 billion or more, or sometimes even from a millionaire or a billionaire. I hope that makes sense. I think it's a dyslexia thing. It could be an ADHD thing, maybe. To think of like all infinite possibilities. A lot of people are said to be dyslexic and have ADHD. Like people say, if you go back in history, maybe people like Leonardo da Vinci and many others. I'm going to give one example there, but it wasn't largely diagnosed. But I think the founder of JetBlue has both dyslexia, and JetBlue Airlines has both dyslexia and ADHD. And there are many others as well. It's like there's many overlapping conditions. But once again, I'd love to know from people with ADHD, maybe family members and whatnot, friends and whatnot, what are the best ways to empower people with ADHD? Hopefully, people get involved in the comments and offer loads of suggestions. 13, although I know it can come with some weaknesses as well. And I normally say selfish thing. I love to see, in this case, people with ADHD showing what they can do to contribute to Italian football. Number 14, I wonder if people with ADHD can solve problems. Number 15, I'd love to find out more about ADHD and like weaknesses and strengths. But given my use of alliterations, I thought like there is a dyslexia advantage, an organisation called, I think it's still going. Someone said they lost their funding, but I think there's some sort of work where they used to have like seminars and things like that, whatever they're called. I don't know if it's seminars, summits or events or conferences or whatever. I get those mixed up. But yeah. Whatever the differences between those things. I'd love for like places like South Africa to do summits for people with atypical conditions, in this case like ADHD, as I said with like autism as well. And I think it would be cool to have an organisation like the ADHD Advantage. It could be the Autism Advantage, ADHD Advantage, and whatnot, which looks at changing the perceptions of such conditions and looking at the positive sides. As some people say, as I say, it's an entrepreneur's superpower in some ways and things like that. So it can be a really good thing. I don't know how in like areas. I don't know how ADHD affects art, poetry, art, writing. Maybe it can be something where maybe not having the focus, or maybe some people with ADHD, when they really like something like poetry, art, and writing, or whatever it might be, they can be really good at it. But maybe if they don't like it, they don't get into it. And I think there's oppositional defiance syndrome or something like that, which I'm not sure if that's an ADHD and autism thing, or just autism, or whatever, or just ADHD. I think it's both sometimes. being rebellious, maybe I suppose you could say, which might come across in a bad way. But also, some say autism people, ADHD people have like liking bias sort of thing, where they get offended easily if people don't like them or whatever, stuff like that. But again, people with ADHD might talk about how ADHD affects them. I know I could always Google like symptoms, but I am curious, like, does ADHD potentially make you a worse or better poet, artist, actor, or writer? Does it depend on the individual? Could ADHD hinder those areas or help those areas? Technology is another one. I know Bill Gates said like he might have ADHD, Andrew, or autism if he was going up today. He would be diagnosed with those things more than likely. But anyway, moving on, number 16. I'd say I'd love to know what are the best ways to support people with ADHD, and I'd love to ask like 40 questions or maybe 50 questions or whatever. I'd say 40 maybe to ask, because I know I like to stick to my lists of 40, but I suppose I could mix it up. Maybe sometimes just do 30, sometimes do 50 or whatever, but I'd say 40 anyway to keep it simple. Questions to ask people with ADHD, although I don't know if I can think of that many. But yeah, I'd love for people to get involved in the comments and I'd say share any possible information about ADHD and how to empower and support people with ADHD. And that kind of thing. Also, I'd say I'd love to know, think about questions. What do you think having an ADHD millionaires network would help people with ADHD? Like, would it help to inspire people with ADHD? And maybe they could even invest in other people with ADHD who are not yet millionaires to help them and mentor people, similar with the billionaires version. Number 17, I'd say it'd be interesting to imagine an ADHD millionaires network, or even billionaires network, or there could be a mix where there's people with a net worth of $1 million or more, or whatever. So different groups of what I call billionaires. So I think like infinite possibilities in many ways. So there could be a version just for millionaires with ADHD, and there could be another one just for billionaires with ADHD, and there could be one for both millionaires and for billionaires with ADHD. I know that probably sounds very greedy and capitalistic of me, but if I got 10% of the equity, as I mentioned in the past, I would donate that to like all my 5 causes. Number 18, as I say, I'd love to see the positive sides of ADHD, the ADHD advantage. I think that'd be pretty cool. What do you think of the idea of the ADHD advantage and mentors for people with ADHD and networks and that kind of thing? And again, what are the most empowering things? What do you think about the idea of the empowerment plan? And do you think an ADHD empowerment plan could also, a productive plan, do you think that should be part of the empowerment plan or something a bit separate? Because could there be 2 different things, or is that just sort of connected? Also, talking about my 5 causes, I'd love to see how ADHD, people with ADHD, if I could convince them, or at least a few of them, like it's a numbers game, so even if I can't win them all over, as I say, you can't win them all. I'd like to think you can, but you probably can't. But if I can get as many people with ADHD as possible, I'd love to see what they can contribute to Italian football, Celtic, libertarianism, although they might have different political views. Helping people from former colonies, could former colonies host their own events and developing nations and whatnot, and also tackling poverty, alleviating suffering, and spreading peace, love, joy, hope, and happiness, and possibly supporting their fellow ADHDers. Number 19, again, I'd love to know how ADHD affects things like programming, software development, coding, and basically tech generally, and also number 20, also in terms of STEM or other areas like, say, poetry, art, writing, and things like that. And I'm sure, it depends on the individual. Like some ADHDers are brilliant at business, and some might never run a business. So it can probably affect people differently. But maybe some could run a business, but need the right help and encouragement and mentorship and that kind of thing. So they need that right push to get into that area. And